In the headlines this afternoon with the ITV Lunchtime News.
The teenager who caused carnage at a dance class pleads guilty to murder on the first day of his trial. 3 young girls were killed, 8 other children were injured, as were 2 adults in an attack that shocked the country. Axel Rudakabana was 17 when he carried out the mass stabbings last July. Today, he also pleaded guilty to possessing an Al-Qaeda training manual and making ricin.
This was an unspeakable attack, one which has left an enduring mark on our community and the nation for its savagery and senselessness.
It also then led to the summer riots. We'll have the details and reaction from Liverpool Crown Court. Also this lunchtime, we're in America for Trump's return to the White House. It's inauguration day, and even before he's sworn in, he's promised he'll move with historic speed and strength on environmental issues, immigration and diversity. And what a cool job, the incredible opportunity for some very remote working in Antarctica.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. The teenager accused of a mass stabbing at a dance class in Southport has pleaded guilty on what was expected to be the first day of his trial. The shock change in plea from Axel Rudakabana happened this morning at Liverpool Crown Court. Refusing to stand up, he pleaded guilty to the murders of 3 young girls and the attempted murder of 8 other children and 2 adults. It wasn't classed as a terrorist attack, but today he also pleaded guilty to producing the deadly poison ricin and having an Al-Qaeda training manual. The stabbings sparked the summer riots across the UK after it was wrongly claimed on social media that he was an asylum seeker. In fact, he was born in Cardiff. He'll be sentenced on Thursday. Charlie Frost has the details.
9-year-old Alice De Silva Aguirre, 6-year-old BB King, and 7-year-old Elsie Dot Stankham, 3 little girls, murdered as they danced at a summer holiday club in Southport last July. Today, after denying their killings, Axel Rudakabana changed his plea. Refusing to stand and wearing a face mask, the 18-year-old quietly replied guilty as he admitted killing the 3 girls, as well as the attempted murders of 8 other children and 2 adults.
This was an unspeakable attack, one which has left an enduring mark on our community and the nation for its savagery and senselessness. It is clear that this was a young man with a sickening and sustained interest in death and violence. He has shown no signs of remorse.
This is him as a child, around the same age as the girls he's now admitted murdering. A boy born in Cardiff who moved to Southport with his family, his father moving to the UK from Rwanda more than 20 years ago. But last summer, violent riots spread across the country in the days after the stabbings, fuelled by misinformation shared on the internet that the then 17-year-old Rudakabana was an asylum seeker who had come to the country by boat last year. Today, shortly after arriving at Liverpool Crown Court on what would have been the first day of his 4-week trial, Rudakabana, seen here pacing outside his family home before July's attack, also admitted producing deadly poison ricin, as well as possessing an Al-Qaeda training manual. The judge today apologised to families who weren't in court to hear his guilty plea, telling Rudakabana it was inevitable he'd now face life in jail. He'll be sentenced on Thursday. Charlie Frost, ITV News.
Our North of England correspondent Rachel Townsend joins me now live from Liverpool. Rachel, take us through what happened in court.
Well, Nina, it was a hugely dramatic few moments in court. Axel Rudikabana was brought to the dock by 3 security officers. Almost immediately, he was asked by the judge to stand. He refused. He was asked again, please stand. He refused. He was then asked twice to confirm his name. Twice he remained silent, and then his defence barrister walked over to the dock and had a short conversation with him, during which Axel Rudikabana quietly nodded, and then his barrister returned and asked the court clerk to put all the charges to him again. And then came those 16 guilty pleas. His voice was very mumbled. He spoke through a surgical mask, and as Charlie alluded to there, no families were in court to hear these pleas. Indeed, nobody was expecting, including the police, this change in pleas today. He will be sentenced on Thursday for the murders of those 3 little girls, B.B. King, Elsie Stankham and Alice De Silva Aguirre, and the attempted murder of 10 others. The judge told him only one sentence would be available to him, and that is one of life imprisonment.
Rachel, thank you very much. Our UK editor Paul Brand is with me. What else do we know, Paul, about the killer?
Well, look, Nina, there is relief that the families aren't going to have to sit through this trial. We know that the details were due to be harrowing. We've been briefed on them before the trial was due to take place. And I think, quite frankly, everyone is relieved that we're not going to have to listen to all of that, not least of all, as I say, the parents of those 3 girls. But there are difficult things that they are about to find out, I'm afraid to say, not least of all the harrowing question of whether their daughters' lives could have been saved if Axel Rudikabana had been stopped earlier. And it looks as if there were opportunities to stop him earlier. We know that he was expelled from a school because he was waving around a hockey stick, threatening another pupil. We know too that neighbours have described how the family were troubled, that the parents were struggling to deal with Rudikabana's violent tendencies. In fact, I've been told by a Home Office source this morning that there isn't an agency that hasn't failed in this particular case. Those details are due to come out in the coming days. We're expecting the Home Secretary to talk about this at some length. There was a lot of speculation at the time around terrorism. Why wasn't he being tried on terrorist charges? That, at the moment, remains the case because although he was motivated by violence, there isn't a clear motivation in terms of an ideology here either. That's still a very confusing picture, but certainly questions about why his violence wasn't stopped sooner.
Paul, thank you very much for that. Thank you. To America now, and what will a second Trump presidency look like? We are about to find out. Donald Trump will be sworn in for his second stint in the White House just before 5 p.m. our time. He's already promised a whirlwind first 24 hours, saying he would move with historic speed and strength on a range of issues, including environmental areas, immigration and diversity. The Republican says he'll use his presidential powers to overturn many of the things that President Biden did. Let's take you live now to Washington and the Capitol building, where that swearing-in ceremony will take place in just a few hours' time. And once those official inauguration duties are dispensed with, the world will get a glimpse of what might be in store over the next 4 years. With the latest, here's our US correspondent, Dan Rivers.
America is waking to a new political dawn and a peaceful transfer of power after the tumult 4 years ago. In a little over 3 hours, Donald Trump will be here at the heart of the US political establishment to take the oath of office again, a presidency bestowed with a mandate from the American people. His loyalists have waited through the bitter cold of night to watch this moment at an entertainment arena on giant screens, the cold weather denying them the chance to see him in the flesh.
It's so wonderful just to see so many people of all different backgrounds come together because, for one reason, not to worship a man, but to celebrate his victory.
Last night, some 20,000 of the party faithful were afforded the privilege of seeing him with their own eyes as he appeared at a victory rally, hinting at the rapid pace of change ahead.
But starting tomorrow, I will act with historic speed and strength and fix every single crisis facing our country.
He suggested illegal immigration would be his highest priority.
By the time the sun sets tomorrow evening, the invasion of our borders will have come to a halt, and all the illegal border trespassers will in some form or another be on their way back home.
He previewed the huge cuts coming to swathes of the government.
Come here, Elon!
Introducing the world's richest man, who'll head up a new Department of Government Efficiency, accompanied by his son, X.
He's a very enthusiastic supporter, as you can see. Woo! Yeah!
Donald Trump also vowed to pardon those convicted for their part in the assault on the Capitol. The event ended with a performance of a song which has become his unofficial theme. A man soon to become the commander-in-chief again, clearly reveling in this moment. Then it was on to an exclusive candlelit dinner attended by tech billionaires and the party elite.
It's been a long 4 years, nasty. It's been a nasty 4 years.
This morning, Donald Trump and his family were heading to this church near the White House, the scene of riots during the Black Lives Matter protests. A few hundred meters away, Joe Biden was carrying out his last official act, issuing preemptive pardons for some of Donald Trump's enemies. After the victorious speeches last night, now comes the greatest burden of all, the weight of office. In a few hours' time, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States, crowning one of the greatest political comebacks in US history. Dan Rivers, ITV News, Washington.
In just under an hour's time, the Trumps are expected to have tea at the White House with the outgoing leader Joe Biden and his wife before processing to the Capitol. At 5 o'clock our time, the swearing-in ceremony will take place inside the Capitol building. That will be followed by a signing ceremony and lunch. It's then thought the president will head to the Capital One Arena to address thousands of gathered ticket holders. Let's go live to the arena now, where his supporters have started to arrive. Our correspondent Romilly Weeks is there. Romilly, what's the atmosphere like so far?
Well, there are people coming here from all over the United States. I've met people who've driven 9 hours through the night from Indiana, who've flown in from California, who've come here from Minnesota. There are people walking up the hill towards me in a steady stream, some with their MAGA hats, with blankets, with their children, all heading up to the Capital One Arena in the distance there, which will now be the only opportunity for the public to see their new president, because plans that have been months in the making have had to be unravelled, remade very quickly because of the bitter, bitter cold here. And although there were 200,000 tickets issued for the National Mall when it was going to be outside, there are only 20,000 people who can fit into that arena up there. So there are going to be many disappointed supporters of the new president who won't be able to get in, who won't be able to see the new president in person at the culmination of his remarkable comeback, unthinkable just 4 years ago. The man who very much likes to be the star of his own show staged a triumphalist rally in the same arena last night. There are some suggestions today that he could even bring a desk into the arena and start to sign some of the executive orders, the flurry that he promised in front of the crowd there. Orders that he says will introduce the biggest deportations in US history, slash environmental regulations and pardon January the 6th rioters. That's going to alarm some of America, not those who are here today, though, who are feeling pretty jubilant.
Romilly, thank you. We can almost feel the cold from here. Thank you very much. And our live coverage of the inauguration begins at 4 p.m. here on ITV1 and STV. And right now, over on our streaming service ITVX, you can go behind the scenes at our Washington rooftop studio with Tom Bradby. He reveals all, including how he and the team will be keeping warm in those sub-freezing temperatures. Plus, don't miss the latest edition of our Talking Politics USA podcast. It's on ITVX and wherever you get your podcasts. To one of the main international issues in President Trump's in-tray now, the war in Gaza following the October 7th attacks 15 months ago. The ceasefire officially began yesterday. 3 Israeli hostages were released. And in the early hours, some of the Palestinians imprisoned by Israel were also freed as part of the first phase of that ceasefire deal. With the latest, here's Martha Fairley.
In the early hours of the morning, surrounded by jubilant crowds, first buses emerged from Offa prison in the occupied West Bank, carrying some of the 90 Palestinian prisoners and detainees released by Israel. The joy and relief visible as they were reunited with friends and relatives. Among the mainly women and teenage boys to be released, the Palestinian politician Khalida Jarrar. We thank everybody for this freedom, she said, and on the other side, the pain for the loss of big numbers of martyrs. 7 hours earlier, 3 Israeli hostages had been handed over by Hamas as the fragile ceasefire began. They included 28-year-old British-Israeli Emily Damari, snatched from her home in a kibbutz during the 7th of October attack. This morning, in an Instagram post in Hebrew, Emily wrote, "Love, love, love," giving thanks and saying, "I'm the happiest in this world simply to exist," signing off with an emoji referencing the 2 fingers she lost when she was shot. Emily will remain in hospital in Tel Aviv for several days, undergoing medical tests and psychological assessments. But in an update, her mother Mandy said, "I am relieved to report that after her release, Emily's doing much better than any of us could ever have anticipated. I'm also happy that during her release, the world was given a glimpse of her feisty and charismatic personality." But there is still far to go in this ceasefire. In Gaza, some of the almost 2 million displaced people have begun the journey back to their homes, or what is left of them after 15 months of bombardment. Thousands of trucks filled with aid are queuing to get into Gaza. Roads need to be cleared, shelters constructed. And there are hopes that this ceasefire can lead to a more durable and lasting peace. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Let's join our senior international correspondent John Irvine in Tel Aviv. John, peace holds for now, but potential pitfalls ahead.
Good afternoon, Nina. Yes, after 15 turbulent months, peace has descended on Gaza and Israel. But you're right, there are potentially big difficulties ahead in the form of negotiations that start on February the 3rd regarding the second critical phase of this ceasefire deal. Now, those talks have been delayed for a fortnight to allow for confidence building and a feel-good factor to develop. But as I say, those talks will be crucial. Hamas will have to make a key decision. Are they willing to free their remaining trump cards, the 64 hostages they'll still be holding then? And are the Israelis really willing to end this war permanently without achieving their primary war goal of total victory over Hamas? Now, the Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, is saying that this ceasefire is very probably temporary. But ultimately, Nina, I think that decision will be up to Donald Trump. He owns this ceasefire now. It was Trump's threat of hell to pay that got this ceasefire deal over the line. He has shown that he can bend both sides to his will. And if he really wants this ceasefire to become permanent, then I think it will be difficult for the Israelis and for Hamas to deny him.
John Irvine, thank you very much. Thank you. Here, 2 teenagers have appeared in court charged with the murder of a schoolboy on a bus in London. The Old Bailey held how 14-year-old Kellyanne Bokassa was attacked almost instantaneously by two boys with machetes on the back seat of a bus in Woolwich. The teenagers are too young to be named. And England's chief medical officer has said that the nation is in a less good place since the pandemic when it comes to health data. Speaking at the COVID inquiry, Professor Sir Chris Whitty said that less data is shared across the NHS than it was during the pandemic. He added that bringing information together will be essential to help the country react to future emergencies. Finally, this lunchtime, how do you fancy a new job working in one of the most beautiful places on Earth? The British Antarctic Survey is hiring. It needs a range of roles covered, from carpenters to chefs, plant operators to plumbers. Mahathir Pasha on the opportunities for those wanting to put their careers on ice.
There's remote working, and then there's really remote working. A series of new vacancies in the coldest parts of the world have today opened. Successful applicants will be able to chill out on some of the most beautiful places on Earth as the British Antarctic Survey begins its latest recruitment drive. A couple of stints at the Rothera research station were so enjoyable for this chef that he said to go back.
It's quite magical, really. I think the sheer beauty of it is quite it's hard to translate into words. It's on another scale. Everything is sort of massive, pristine.
It's being billed as an opportunity of a lifetime, but it's no joke. BAS prides itself on its scientific research, which it says informs the decision makers. But now the decision about whether or not to work in conditions which can drop to minus 90 degrees Celsius is yours.
Technicians, medical staff and chefs will also work here,
as the organisation looks for 29 new recruits, ranging from plumbers to plant operators. If you're interested in a job in the polar region, it's time to polish up your CV, with the recruitment drive set to last until March. There's no denying a job like this is unlike any other, and who knows, working in the cold might make you pretty cool. Mahathir Pasha, ITV News.
Mary will be here with the evening news at 6:30 from everyone on the Lunchtime team. Whatever you're doing, have a lovely rest of afternoon. Bye-bye.